The conference title today and yesterday was the Syrian conflict and the promotion of reconciliation and its implications for international security. When I was listening to the various speakers, they brought their thoughts about reconciliation after victory. But we are not in a situation there. We have at best a stalemate, perhaps not even a hurting stalemate, which in theory of negotiations is a good moment to make a deal. Well, we had Geneva I, we had Geneva II, we don't have no deal. The international community has, on paper, a responsibility to protect, but that responsibility is not lived up to. We have a divided Security Council. We have, as some of the speakers have pointed out, a Cold War Part 2, a hot war in Syria, where Shia, Sunni, Russian, American rivalries all pay up. So it is a very difficult situation. One of the questions asked was, we have seen the pictures of Darfur, why can those be shown, and those of Rwanda and Narcissus, but not of Syria? The Darfur conflict is still going on for more than 10 years, and there is no solution in sight. The question is, how long will this conflict go on before a solution comes in sight? We are now in year 3. We have civil wars on the average last, since the end of the Cold War, 4 years, but there are many that go on for longer. The question is also, is this a civil war? Is it a revolution? Is it a resistance? Is it state terrorism or insurgent terrorism? Each party tries to define the conflict in different ways and tries to convince other parties that this is the prisma through which this conflict has to be seen. The question I would like to pose to the members of the panel is there not a reconciliation among the different diaspora parties necessary so that they can speak with one voice before the international community can be convinced to take more forceful action than it has? I've seen yesterday and today clear analysis, but they are analysis from a particular vantage point. And while there has been lip service or genuine both to the Syrian people, we have to remember that international law does not define what a people is. It doesn't define what a nation is. We have a definition of a state, but not a people. I remember we had a human rights conference 21 years ago in Vienna, and we talked about the letter S. There were people who had a right to self-determination, and there were peoples, the indigenous peoples, who said, we are also people. And that conflict between the people who have a state and the peoples who were minorities was one of the breaking points. So the way situations are defined are important. And the question I would like to ask to all the panelists is, what can the diaspora do to promote reconciliation, to bring the international community to more determined and forceful action? And I would like to start at the end of the table and pass the microphone right there. Yeah.
Thank you.
Under your
I think I'm not optimistic. I think the area going to Spanish problem which started the Second War. The same happened in Syria now. Lot of people involved in Syria and lot of the states and lot of the crises don't have solutions. About the human rights, now we face the crimes. The problem with the regime is not only the human rights, it's the crimes. The crimes is different than the human rights. The problem with the regime is crimes. We have to account them. After that, we have to establish a justice. Then we can achieve gradually the peace because there is justice, there is a laws, there is a international courts or local courts. All of these, nobody work for it. The international law, the UN gives Syria the independence and gives Syrian people his right to self-determine. And after that, let the dictator, which is agent to the security of the West states, we know, everybody in Syria knows this regime don't come by elections, they come by a coup which supported from CIA and MI6, especially. And he controls Syria because they support them. And till now, they try to find a way to let them escape the revenge. And they say, yes, we are against, but we think they are with this regime till now. I believe we have to respect the people, we have to respect the other people, we have to speak about neighbors, not about slaves. We have to forget the years of colonial ideas. After that, we can start with the international society, a new style, a new kind of relations. I think the people who sacrificed for his freedom, for his dignity, has to respect this. And the Syrian people or the Arab people need to be freedom, need to be good neighbors, but we hope we have the other side is accept that. Thank you.
The question was what diaspora, the Syrian diaspora can do for reconciliation? That was the question.
Yes.
I think the Syrian diaspora by itself, they must do something, but they have not a lot to do in this conflict. We are suffering now of a regional war inside the country and international war inside the country. The diaspora could help by providing food, some money, clothes to those refugees who have nothing to eat, who have nothing to wear up. What else? The Syrian diaspora outside could be a good agent for helping the unity, some kind of unity between the fraction of the opposition. But what is controlling this unity, who has the big effect on this unity, is those countries who are supporting the fraction of the opposition. We see that Iran, Russia, and some kind of Iraqi regime, Hezbollah, are united behind the regime. They are supporting him in united efforts. They are giving soldiers, weapons, money. Where? In the opposition. The Western countries, the free world, have left the democracy building in Syria in those hands who has no democracy, who is controlling now the opposition fractions. We know Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and others. Those countries have no possibility to build democracy inside Syria. And those now are trying every country alone to have more control on this opposition. The diaspora could help the opposition by financing this opposition to be not necessary to have money from those supporters.
Thank you. Is that Ruby?
Same question.
Yeah.
I usually like to make analogies. So the analogy is, we, the Syrian, we have bought our ticket on the democratic flight. We're flying on the democratic trip, and we're not giving up, and we refuse Bashar Assad to be the pilot of that flight. He has to step down, he has to leave us, go and have our own dignity. Now, the obligation of the international community is to make sure that he is not there, and that all Syrians can sit down on a round table and discuss our future.
Thank you, Professor. I have really a great problem with the diaspora, Syrian diaspora, because the Syrian diaspora do not see themselves as a diaspora. Look at the people in this here. Nobody of them wanted to leave Syria, even myself. We have, one was a prisoner by Hafiz al-Assad and Bashar al-Assad. One was a prisoner in Bashar al-Assad. One was with 16 years old outside Syria. One was a prisoner by Hafiz al-Assad. Here, our sister Samira Msalmi was the chief redacteur of Tishrin Zeitung, Tishrin newspaper, the biggest newspaper in Syria, pro-regime newspaper. She has been just interviewed about the people in Dar'a, because she is from Dar'a, and she could not keep her emotion, and she cried by the interview of Al Jazeera, because she knew from her own family about 700 people has been killed.
Tribe, not family.
Okay, Stamm, not family. And she went out of Syria. Is she diaspora now? We are not diaspora. And so I think even our people should see us also as a Syrian people in this world. Those people who went to Brazil to 1914, those are Syrian diaspora. We are not Syrian diaspora. We are Syrian today, but we are obliged to live outside of this country. The one voice of the opposition is here. The one voice is Syria without dictatorship, pluralistic Syria, democratic Syria, and a modern Syria is consensus in all relative forces of the Syrian opposition and Syrian intellectual. And nobody can claim, make yourself first unit and come to us. This unity for this question is very clear and transported a lot of times in many events. Where is the problem? One of the greatest problems in Syria, dear friends, is the so-called political card, Islamic political card in Syria. What do I mean with that? We have very weak political power with Islamic background. We have the Muslim Brotherhood. They are strong structured in functioning, but not a very strong power inside Syria. I don't know what my brother Molham said or not, but it is not the biggest one. We have now a lot of extremist groups, Salafis. All of them have no roots in Syria. And the main powers of the ulama, the scholars in Syria, the imams of the mosques, has no political voice. They are just working humanitarian way. They have even if they speak politically, they make a lot of mistakes in every sentence because they never work politically. I think one of the main challenges in Syria to have an Islamic voice with Islamic background, but with a program for everybody, giving the rights of all minorities out of question. And this is also our duty, to let the people know when this Bashar Assad stepped down, nobody is going to make massacre against Alawis or Christian or whatever. This voice is our responsibility to transport it in credible way. If we like it or not, we have to be credible in our message. And I think we need people like that time. Shukri al-Quwatli negotiated a free Syria 1936 in France. 8 people went to France to negotiate the independency of Syria. A lot of people were against them, and they did not like what they did. Even Shahbandar, Abdurrahman Shahbandar was against this. But they take their priority for having Syria, and they did not fight each other. When we have this situation, we will solve the problems of Syria, I think, in diaspora, but also in a clear connection with the Syrian inside, because without having the credibility of the Syrian people, we do not have any value. We can just speak in conferences, but we do not have any power if the people in Syria are not behind us. Thank you.
Thank you. Somebody in the audience asked the $50,000 questions. What is going to happen next? What are the scenarios? And if you look at the power on the ground, we see that after 3 years, the Syrian army has only a defection rate of 20%, and that seems to be consolidated. The Syrian regime still has huge amounts of ammunition, and new come in. Its air force and its artillery are still very strong. So the prospects on the ground are not good for the Syrian people. They are not good for the diasporas. And you need a game changer. I've heard voices that say Geneva 1, Geneva 2, that is not going to bring a solution. Well, we had, in the case of the Palestinian problems, the negotiations in Madrid in the 1990s that did not bring a solution. But Oslo happened at the same time. And the same happens probably in the case of Syria. In Geneva, they might negotiate at one place openly, but at the other place, some of the actors that are not participating in the official negotiations are nevertheless there. And these negotiations have to go on. You have to find for solutions on many fronts. One of the speakers said, there can be no peace without justice. But historically, you often had to make a cruel choice between peace and justice. And just wars can be very cruel and be very long. And if both sides think justice on their side, it will go on for a very long time. We had such a war for 30 years between 1618 and 1648. We had not only 30 years wars in Europe, we had an 80 years war where my country, the Netherlands, was involved. We had a 100 years war before between England and France. It lasted 116 years. You are entering year 4. And just to hope for victory is, in this situation, hope against hope almost. And the international community, well, it's an apathetic community. It is involved, has all sorts of problems and pseudo problems. It's interested more in Sochi than in what's happening in Aleppo. That is, unfortunately, the world we live in. At this stage, I would like to invite the audience to come up with answers to the $50,000 question. Where are we going from here? Are there new elements entering the equation that can break through the stalemate that the country and the region is in? Where do you see a green light or a ray of sunshine, a ray of hope to get out of this ongoing slaughters that has been illustrated so well by one of our speakers? So I open this to the audience, and maybe some of you can think outside the box of which we have all been caught in our narrow tunnel visions. Sometimes conflicts cannot be solved, but they have to be transformed. I see a hand, so please stand up, identify yourself, and use your voice, because the acoustics in this room is very bad. Why don't you just come around here, and I pass the microphone to you, so that we can be sure that... Okay. Can you make it here? Yeah.
I spoke yesterday and today, but quickly because the organizer forced me, so I hope that this time you hear speak slowly. I think that if I want to talk about this point, certainly where the solution starts, I think it starts when we start to hear each other. Because now every party will sit in some valley and doesn't want to listen to the other. So when the demonstration starts, Assad people, they don't want to hear. Now, I can tell you some funny thing. I can go to the Syria now and tell them I didn't see any Stefan Dorn in Vienna. And I'm right. I came from the airport to Al-Erla and lived there 1 month and came back to Syria. And I will assure to anybody else that I meet some people, they say we didn't see any demonstration in Syria. And they came from the airport to Slovenia, and they sit in Monroe Cafe, and they came to here and they say, we didn't see any demonstration in Syria, we didn't see these pictures. Yeah, they are right, they are not liars. So, since the starting of the, maybe before the 10 years ago, 40 years ago, there is one party doesn't want to listen to the other, that they don't see any problem. Now, these parties didn't just appear, no, we have 4 or 5 or 50 parties the same. For example, if I want to talk about the dirty rule of Turkey, some people will not be satisfied. Now Turkey rented some people and make them in Istanbul in 5-star hotels. They pay to them the salaries, huge salaries, actually all the money that declared by the countries that we will give the Syrian nation $1 billion, they go to the bucket. They didn't only salaries, they start businesses in Istanbul. So when I talk about that, also the people are not, many people, they make Erdogan is caliph. They don't talk about him as political. They think he is, you cannot talk even about Erdogan or his party. But Erdogan, he rented, like Assad, rented some people to make them decoration. Erdogan also, of course, not Erdogan himself, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and also, they rented people like Assad and make them decoration. And now we are talking about everything except the Syrian nation. Now the Erdogan people, they say Russia is the reason. And Assad people, they say Saudi is the reason. But nobody talk about the real reason. And as yesterday I said that quickly, but I will try to say that now slowly. Excuse me, just give me some time. Now, both the parties, I want to assure about this point, I want to talk about that intensively. Both of the parties, Russia and Iran, some of the guests talk about that, and Turkey and Saudi Arabia, both of them, they are not interested in overcoming, in victory. Both of them, they are not. Both of them, they are interested in the war itself. I will tell that again. Both of them want this war to continue, and I said more than one proof about that. Turkey, I know I was living in Turkey and in Syria for 1 year and 1 year. And I know certainly that Turkey, they can do many things to make this, as Mr. Tarafa said. Erdogan said, I will not allow Hamas, and now 4 or 5 Hamas. And we thought that it is by mistake, but when he repeated that again and again, we discovered that it's just a play, and he's just a player, like Aragoz. We call that Aragoz in Ottoman. Then he appear just once a month or once 6 months and say, divide, speak, so, okay. So I think that the problem, the real problem, when we forget, we talk about the people these people, not about every party rented some people, and I may do that, speak in another time, but I hope that I didn't speak for a long time. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We can ask questions, we can make statements, but we have a very knowledgeable panel here. We have also expertise in the audience. So I would like to look for other contributions from the audience, preferably from people who have so far not yet raised their voice. Yeah. Well, while you are thinking what to ask, I have a contribution here from my colleague.
Just 2 points to what have been said. Firstly, your point with justice, very important. We should have very clear issue. Gerechtigkeit, nicht Rache, statt Rache. Das heißt justice and not revenge. Is very important when we are speaking about justice. Is, of course, criminal wars should be dealt, but also under human rights and maybe in international law, and no revenge. Nobody should pay anything because somebody in its family, her or his family, make any crime. This is very important, and in this issue we could learn also from other countries how they dealt with these issues. Next point, my friend from Syria. I said that I criticized the friends of Syria, but I would never give Turkey, even Saudi Arabia or Qatar, in the same way like Iran and Russia for the regime. We should acknowledge also countries like Turkey who opened the border for Syria, for Syrian people. We should acknowledge also the Lebanese or the Jordan with many points of criticism, no doubt about that. But we could say it was too hurry from Erdogan to say I would not allow. It was tactically or strategically not the right way or whatever. But we cannot say. We should also say thank you for any kind of solidarity and any kind of support. Otherwise, we are not the people who just are arguing against anybody who is giving them any support or help. That means, yes, we acknowledge any help. We thank everybody for every solidarity, but we expect more strategical thinking in the political way how the problems are going to be solved.
Well, you took over my equation. We have a cruel choice between peace and justice, and that is a choice between peace and revenge.
Exactly.
But that might not be the option we have. What we have is almost genocidal massacres by the regime. And the way some of the ISIS people who have been called too extreme by Al-Qaeda behave, are also genocidal. So are we in a situation of genocidal warfare? In the past, you had war, and usually one party was seriously defeated, and for a generation you had peace. This is becoming less frequent as both sides get outside help and there is no clear outcome. And the result of a protracted conflict is sometimes worse than what happened at a defeat, though we should not forget that in many wars in the past, at the end of wars, to the genocide of the defeated party. Certainly the Romans 2,000 years ago were having a knack at that, and that really we saw already when Syria as a nation or as a geographic entity was created after the Jewish uprising 67 to 70. I pass on the microphone to my colleagues on the right. Can you give it on?
No. I'd like to say that reconciliation will not be possible with Jolani, Baghdadi, Bashar al-Assad. Those three powers must go out.
Explain who is Jolani and Baghajati.
Jolani is the Nusra leader, Baghdadi, Daesh leader, and Bashar al-Assad with his supporters like Nasrallah and others. Between those three fractions, the reconciliation will be impossible. The reconciliation will not be possible without justice, but it couldn't be possible just with justice. The reconciliation will not be possible without forgiveness.
Exactly.
We must be convinced we have to forgive. The first demand we want is stop killing by those three killers. After stopping killing, we have to be convinced that we have to forgive. We need justice, yes. We need to say that those are the killing. But we have to have a big heart if we really would like to rebuild Syria as we dreamed before, to forgive. There is no country was rebuilt without forgiveness. In the same time, it's impossible to rebuild the country without justice. We need both. Dismiss the killer, justice, forgiveness. Thank you.
Pass it on to you.
Okay. I think there is a problem in the Middle East. In Jordan, 80% is refugee from Palestine and Syria now, from the people of Jordania. In Lebanon, half of this people now is refugee from Syria and Palestine also. I think there is a problem. We have to solve it in a big Marshall project. We need a project for peace, for stability, depend on justice, depend on benefits, mutual respect. This is very important to think about all the areas, not inside Syria and with. The other thing I will speak about the fanatic or the Islamist or the terrorist. I think there is action and reaction. If we stop the action, we can absorb the reaction. I don't ask for dismiss the foreign fighters. I need to absorb them in the society of Syria to return to the society life. This is very important to understand that if they return, if they have families, if they involve in the society, yes, they will not go more as a terrorist. We can solve the problem in this way. If we think in this way, I think we can, if we respect the people of Syria can solve every problem if we respect him, if we give him a chance to express himself, to control himself. I believe in people. I believe there is a very clever, very honest, very religious people. We can depend in the people of Syria and think.
I think criminals are not alike. Responsibilities are not the same. Accountability is not at the same level. Bashar Assad, as a person, holds responsibility number one. He is accountable number one for all the souls that have been lost, all the blood that had been shed. If Bashar Assad in the past or now agrees to step down, 80% of our problems are gone. The other 20% we can handle. Although I do not defend and I do not agree on Daesh, but it's not fair to put Daesh leader who is a criminal and Jolani as well, who is also less problem. It's not fair to put both of them at the same level as Bashar. Once Bashar is gone, we can handle the rest. If the international community do not agree, if Washington and Moscow and Tehran and Riyadh and Ankara and Berlin and Paris and London do not agree, then the war is going on. It is prolonging the crisis in Syria, and the end result will be two things. There is no investment in the natural gas wells in the Mediterranean. No one is going to use it. As far as there is fighting in Syria, no one can dare to start drilling the wells in the Mediterranean. Number two, Syria will be dysfunctional country, and when it is dysfunctional country, you cannot control the borders. And when I say the borders, means all borders. And that will, by itself, impose risks on the neighbors. So it is to the best interest of the international community to stop this. And the only way to stop that is to push Bashar al-Assad out of power. Once he is out, and I don't care if he is killed or jailed or do whatever, I'm not after his blood. I am after the freedom of my people, after the unity of my country, after a good future of my children and my grandchildren. And I believe it is your responsibility as well as it is ours to make sure this happens as soon as possible.
Thank you. I would like to give the floor to Tarafa Baghajati to make some remarks on the role of European fighters in Syria. Are these misguided idealists? Are these dangerous jihadists? Why are they so concerned with Syria while much of the international community is raising its shoulders and hopes that the fire will burn out? So please have the floor.
Thank you very much. And indeed, I was surprised that nobody asked this question till today, because everywhere, and I was invited last week in The Hague to speak with about 250 people concerning this issue, European fighters in Syria. And I would like to take this opportunity to speak out the official statement of the Islamic community in Austria. And we have here our brothers and sisters from the opposition, and I think all of us have the same opinion concerning that. Syria do need all kinds of solidarity and help. And when we are speaking in Islamic vocabulary, we say it is fard and not sunnah. It is a duty for everybody to help Syria. For the European, also for the European. For the young people in Europe, of course. For the Muslim in Europe, of course. But do we need European fighters in Syria? The answer is no, very clear and without any exception. We do not need any young people from Europe coming with their weapons to Syria. because of many reasons, and I'm going to tell you those reasons. Firstly, they have no knowledge about the country, about the geography, about the history, about the traditions, about the habits of the people, and no knowledge, 99% have no knowledge of the Arabic language. Even there is people, as an example, from Holland and Belgium, from Morocco origin. They do not speak Arabic. They are Arabs, but they do not understand. There's about 200 people, third generation. People from 200 from Belgium. From Austria, there is about 58 persons. From Germany, about 280. From France, about 1,000, and from England, about 400. All of them, we do not need them because of these reasons. Firstly, the knowledge. This misguides them there. They do not even know with whom they are fighting. Most of them are today with Daesh against the Syrian people. And Daesh tell them, you are fighting the Bashar al-Assad people. They do not understand anything. They are just fighting. Even as a fighter, they are not a good fighter. They are a problem even strategically. They are not well-prepared fighters from somewhere. They are 16 years old people from Vienna on the street. Some of them with families, 24 years, and never see a weapon in their life. And they went to Syria to fight Bashar al-Assad. What are you going to do there? We do not need that. Thirdly, and this is very important, they do not know the agenda which they are following there. We know the people who are recruiting them here. They are dubious people. They are people who are not integrated in the Islamic community. They are people who are not accepting even us as a Muslim. And so you are going with those people. And we refuse that. We do not need this agenda in Syria. Syria was the country where the people were coming from Africa, from Chechnya, from everywhere, just to learn Islam. In Aleppo, in Homs, in Damascus, and other countries, and other places. And we do not need this agenda in Syria. And fourthly, this is very important, many of them go there without telling their families. The mother call us, ask, where is my child? I don't know. Who shall I ask, where is the child? They do not hear from them about months and months. And in Islam, is it forbidden? Haram. Ilzam qadamaha fatham al-jannah. As one young man went to the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and asked him to go to fight, he asked him, do you have a mother? He said, yes. He said, go to your mother and stay with her. You are not allowed to go to fight and let your mother alone. And this is the case today in Syria. And theologically, of course, we are ummah. And we have the duty of solidarity, but also we are citizens in every country. We accept the concept of citizenship and the concept of ummah together. That means if you are in Austria and Austria forbids you to be in one other country, then you have to obey this legislation. Do not take your weapon to another country. We refuse that, and this is an official statement. And I think wherever the people ask you, the media and whatever, we do not need them. We call for them as returnees, but please do not criminalize them automatically. A lot of them are going with, they do not even have an idea what's going on. They are not terrorists if they come back. They need open hearts, they need open mind, they need to be reintegrated in the society, and do not make the mistake like in England today, in the UK, wherever who go to Syria, even in humanitarian agenda, if they come back to UK, they take them to the jail. This is not the way how you can fight terrorism. In the same time, we, from Austria as an example, we sent people with humanitarian activities to Syria, but we never sent very young people. We sent a lot of people, elder people, 40, 50 years, who are going, but even if they have somebody who is going to help them, those people should never be criminalized. They are people who are working for humanitarian activities. I think this point was outside maybe of our agenda, but I would like the organizer to take it also in the conclusions of this conference, if my friends agree with this point of view.
Thank you for these clarifying remarks. We come to the end of our conference. It has been very difficult to organize it, and some of those invited here actually refused to sit at the table with us at the last moment. It is the great art of Nico Prucher that he has been able to bring such high caliber representatives from what I call the diaspora, but are actually exiled Syrians to this table. The question is, what can we take home from this two-day meeting? And here I have learned a lot that I will take home, and that we should be engaged. And actually, we are already thinking of organizing a second event in a couple of months' time. And we hope that we can benefit from your wisdom and insights in creating that follow-up event. Like Geneva 1 and 2, we will have a Vienna 1 and 2, and I hope there will not be too many of them, because one day the ice has to break, one day war has come to an end, and it has been said that war starts in the minds of men, and that's where wars also have to end. And I think there's much truth in it. We cannot afford a situation where the people that fight in Syria fight to the total exhaustion, where everybody is a refugee in a neighboring country or is displaced internally or dead or wounded. We cannot afford that this happen, but that demands engagement of everybody according to his means. But the first thing and that is the main obligation, I think, of those Syrians that are here, is to get their act together or to come with a clear message to the international community and to the people in Syria. And last but not least, also to those who support the current regime, that they have nothing to fear once the arms cease. I would like to invite Nico Prucher to come here for a moment and say a word of thanks to those who have made this possible. Please take my seat.
Well, thank you, Alex, for moderating and for jumping in when our friend and colleague Robert had to cancel due to his health. And as we mentioned time and again with the talks with individuals of the Syrian community who made the event happen and who helped in organize and conspire, so to speak, to make contacts possible, to reach out. The intention of this conference is and has been to give a floor to empower Syrian voices, primarily living here in Vienna, working on the other one or the other way for their country. And then we are very happy to have expanded that agenda to Budapest and Saudi Arabia and Stockholm, where there were 3 invited speakers, to provide a broader angle and a bigger picture on Syria. And we are hopeful and keen to maybe have the means for a follow-up event at some time where we can continue this open discussion and where we can continue to provide a form of empowerment for mainly Syrian actors who will meet our Western perception and vice versa to talk about Syria from as many angles as possible. And definitely for a potential future event, we will focus also on the question of Daesh, of Jabhat al-Nusra, of the foreign fighters, and the Western perception. And unfortunately, the success of the regime of Bashar al-Assad to turn the fact of the presence of ISIS in the country in a strategic way to their benefit, with the Western public focusing over and over again on simply this aspect while neglecting primarily the people and many other options and objections. So, Tarafa, thank you very much for... Well, I will start with you. Thank you very much. Okay, but before I pass on for closing remarks to you, I'd like to thank you for making it possible for me to reach out and to connect with Waleed and Kamal and also Molham, and our friend Raswan was also very helpful in making this happen, and others. So in general, thanks from my side to the Syrian community, and
but also from the Syrian community, also many thanks, I think, for Nico. He was working very hard since months, and thank you very much.
You can keep the mic for your closing remarks.
Closing remarks? Closing marking? Yeah,
well, thank you very much, everybody. Thank you for having us here to clarify our point of view and for supporting our people in Syria. This is very important event for us. We'll come back if you invited us again. Thank you very much.
Thank you for everybody have made this meeting possible. I am very happy that I have a chance to speak with people I never speak to them. And I hope that one day, is not far, we will make such kind of meeting in Damascus.
Inshallah.
In peace for God.
I would like to thank you all. My message is no civilization without progress and missiles. Thank you.
I would like to, my last words will be from the director of Louvre Museum in Paris. As he went to Syria, he said, as he came back, every single person in this world has two citizenship. His own citizenship and a Syrian one. He said every culture, every language, every single feeling in this world has root in Syrian area, and I would like really to give you that with you and ask you to keep on having real and clear and deep information concerning Syria, and also wishing for Austria once to take its role again in the Middle East issue. Everybody in Syria knows till today who is Bruno Kreisky.
Yeah.
But nobody knows who is Feynman and who is Spindelegger. And I think it is the time when we have such scholars and connection and everything, and the people love Vienna. Layali al-Unsi fi Vienna, they sing about Vienna and Vienna. And I hope and ask our Ministry of External Affairs, our politicians, to open the doors of Vienna and not to give everything to Geneva, and to be a competition for Geneva, at least on intellectual way. Thank you.
Well, thank you all, and thank you all for your participation. And it's been a long afternoon and two very interesting and intensive days. So I would assume we will probably rush on over to the buffet where coffee and food is waiting for us. So thank you very much.